Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Perspective, a show where we tackle paranormal and supernatural claims, belief in aliens, conspiracy theories, pretty much anything under the sun. I'm your host, Ethan, and alongside me is Brian. How's it going, dude?
Oh, doing all right. Jamming to our kick-ass intro there. I love that.
It is kick-ass, dude. Cynthia, when she made this intro, I think she nailed it. Like, that theme song is to me perfect, very X-Files-y like. I enjoy it.
I know every time that you start the show, and especially when you got a new co-host, you come on the screen, and everybody's jamming.
It's so funny. Even me, I do a little, like, right before we go live, I do this to get the blood pumping. I get still to this day. I was telling Brian before the show, I still get nervous. I want everything to go smoothly. There's always a lot going on, want to make sure we have enough callers. Of course, you're welcome to call the show if you have, proof of aliens, the paranormal. If there's a conspiracy theory you believe, the soul, God, pretty much anything. I was also today trying to find someone who is pro-life to call in. But that's the point of this show, is we'll take pretty much any claim and apply a friendly skeptic's lens to it.
Yeah. We like to ask questions about why you believe what you believe. So if you got something that you believe, call in and talk to us about us. We just want to understand what drove you to that conclusion.
Absolutely. You ready to do our first call?
How long has it been since we hosted a show together? It's been
I was thinking about that too. It's been a while. We're like for those that don't know, Brian and I are like the OGs. He was one of the first people that committed to doing this every other week.
Mm-hmm.
So, we kind of like started out doing this together. So, pretty cool.
Back in the saddle. Who do we got on the line tonight?
Oh, yes. So, we're going to be bringing up Brian. He wants to talk about, at least from the screener notes, people should use expert consensus and refer to that when they are not experts themselves. But how do we determine expertise? Brian, you are on with BrainBug and Ethan. How are you?
Hey guys, I figured I was going to be on first, Brian and Brian. Of course. I do think it is rational, and I do want to avoid committing the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I do think it is rational when we are not experts ourselves on the subject to make an appeal to expertise on that same subject. And that's easy to say, hard to do. And so I'm wondering, how is it that we humans actually do that? How we determine if there is an expert consensus on a given issue, and also how should we, what improvements can we make in how we do that? I can give you some specific topics, examples if you want, so you know what I'm talking about. Some are more abstract, some are more mundane. For instance, we can talk about climate change. If a person says, I don't know if the earth is warming or cooling or anything, how does a person actually determine that, and how should they determine that? Is it just they go to their local news and that's the best they can do? So I doubt 99.9% of us are going to read nature and science journals and be able to understand what's being explained in them. And even what's mentioned and written in scientific journals, it's not going to, I would think, be stuff that's repeating what is already believed in by scientists in the community.
And let me cut in here real quick, because I'm on board with you right here until the 99% of people aren't going to read the journals or make that effort. I don't think that's, I think that should be our goal. I think that we should have the goal to get as many people fluent and enough to read primary research, to have enough of a basic understanding of these topics to vet primary research. Obviously, that's the goal in any field, that we want to get all of our students that are working in that field to a point where they can do that. So what it comes down to is the amount of education you put behind that. So when you're talking to someone who's in a field or referencing someone who's in a field, having a firm understanding of what goes in, not what their field is, not the topic that they're studying, but what goes into their education into that field. What have they done? What have they put into it?
Okay.
Okay.
So I could go to my doctor and I asked for their accreditation, for instance, and they give it to me. And that's one example that I think would work well in that case. And doctors make referrals to other doctors, and they'll say, okay, get a second opinion or see this other specialist, for instance. So I think that would work well to your point.
Right. Yeah, because you go into the medical professional and you know what goes into the education of being a doctor, right? You know what goes into, and maybe it's because we glamorize it in our culture because they are, heroes. For a lot of them are. They save our families' lives. They dedicate themselves to saving people, but maybe these other fields of expertise don't have so much of a spotlight on them that we don't understand what goes into learning that field and knowing what goes into the education process. I mean, we've got so many shows about like medical school and people going to medical school and things like that, and you learn a lot about what kind of work that they actually do when they're undergoing their education. It's unfortunate that we don't get that for a lot of other fields. So it's just, especially like climate science. That's not only is that a new field, there aren't that many people that are working in it. It's not as widespread as something like the medical field. So that gets even less exposure. But I mean, I'm fortunate enough to know a couple of climate scientists, but not everybody has that opportunity, and not everybody knows what goes into their education. One of the climate scientists I know, their education took them to work at NASA. That's how highly educated this individual is. So, Pale Blue Mama, if you're watching, that's a shout out to you. So, but anybody else walking off the street or reading the newspaper about climate science is going to think, what goes into this education? They just check the weather or glorified weatherman or something like that.
Well, other sources of information, let's say even Fox News, I've watched them on occasion, and they bring on their, experts to talk about climate change, and they are skeptical of climate change. And I'll go to a different news network, and they have their own climate scientists, and they have an entirely 180 view of climate change. Who do I believe? Both of them are talking over my head, so I can't make it out. And that's one example. Another thing is, I've read articles by Ken Hovind or Ken Ham. I get them confused, so I'll mess them up. But both of them, or one of them, they are far more familiar with the terminology of paleontology than I am. If I was going to debate either one of them, they would kick my ass.
Same.
So how do
I get that.
I don't feel the same way, but
dude, no, and that sucks. But if Ken Ham or Hovind wanted to debate me on the science, I wouldn't be able to handle that conversation. I know it's assumed that when you're an atheist YouTuber, you automatically know all these things. I don't. I'm learning, and some of these people, they know just enough to be dangerous and to sound really smart. Like for me, I guess what I look for is fallacies or mistakes they're making, or any type of bias I can spot through what they're saying. Because you're right, I can't necessarily determine the difference between two experts on opposing news networks. So for me, that's where I start, is seeing if they're making any mistakes.
What a good launch pad for that is to look at when you see someone on Fox News and someone on some other news network, whatever, saying opposing things, to look at both of their detractors and see kind of what the arguments against their position are that are being presented. You got to kind of, I don't know, there really is on our response. And maybe as a society, we've gotten too lazy to do that ourselves. And there's only so far you can go. And who do you trust? I get that. But to actually look into credentials, like if you looked into Kent Hovind, who presents himself as Dr. Kent Hovind, if you looked into him, for instance, and did some research as to, okay, who's this individual who's making these claims, and looked into where his education comes from. His degree comes from it's a degree mill. There's actually a picture of it online. You can look it up. It's like a double wide trailer in the middle of the desert. It's really not a school at all. He just filled out a thing, wrote a dissertation that's essentially his same Dr. Dino speech that he gives on his channel, and then got a PhD for it. So that it's not accredited. He's not really a doctor. So that should, when you start seeing things like that, start seeing that maybe this person's misrepresenting their information. Maybe they have an agenda, but really just vetting your sources, I guess, is the best way I can explain it.
Also, we do have open lines. So if you're interested in presenting a claim before us, give us a call, 951-364-2430. Brian, did that answer your there's two Brians. Brian on the phone. Did that answer your question?
It helps. I'll have to process it a bit more. I'll just add on that this first started occurring to me back when I was first deconverting strongly into an atheist about 20 years ago. And I was really getting interested in learning about apologetics and philosophy and logic. And everybody always sang the praises of Lee Strobel. And so I first read his Case for Faith, and I could see with my own eyes what another piece of crap that was. And so it discredited him to me. Then I read his Case for Christ, and it was my first experience and encounter with arguments of historicity. I never even heard of or thought of the idea. I'd only heard of philosophical ideas for God or scientific ideas for God, but historical ideas for the Bible was a brand new concept to me, and I couldn't refute anything that he was saying. But then I read, I remember the book title was Challenging the Verdict. It was Earl Doherty, excuse me. It was a cross-examination of Lee Strobel's Case for Christ. And I could see and compare the two right in front of my own eyes. And I think it was Earl Doherty was his name. And he did a lot more thorough and detailed analysis between the two. So that helps a lot. But if I had only restricted myself to Strobel, I wouldn't have known anything about any flaws in his arguments.
Are you talking about like a argument for mythicism or an argument that for a divine Christ?
Just the historicity, and the accuracy of the Bible, the New Testament.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another debate I couldn't handle, the historical accuracy of the Bible. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I've never cared about. Always been an atheist, and I don't know how people memorize Bible verses. That's
right.
A mystery to me.
Same.
Well, I think I could. I think I could argue.
Sorry. Although I would say probably by reading it on repeat over and over again.
Yeah, I think I could say that the Bible, the Bible definitely has historical accuracies in it. I don't think that there's too many experts in the field in that area that are going to say that the Bible's wholly fabricated. I mean, there's obvious references to and historical events present in there. There's some that are accurate and some that are less so, from what I understand. But this is an area that I kind of pass it over to my my friends who are experts in the field, though, as it's not something I'm well versed in.
So, I'll ask you then, what would be your ideas on whether we can determine if there is an expert consensus on whether someone named Jesus existed? I'm not asking for your view if Jesus existed. I'm asking, how could we determine if there was an expert consensus? Can we or no? I don't know.
So we need to. There'd be a lot of moving parts to that kind of investigation, because you'd want to get a fully expert opinion. You need to appeal to people translating. You need to appeal to historians, people who are curating, all these different experts, all looking at the same information, because you got people, carbon dating the documents to make sure, that there's how old they are, and you got people reading them. You got people translating the languages. You got so many moving parts to it that really you got to look at their resources that they're using when it comes to, because if I don't know, you get into things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, where you'll see a lot of unfounded claims made about them. At least as far as I can tell, they don't seem to be realistic claims. But that's just an example of these old documents having different interpretations, I suppose you would say. But there's also forgeries on that. As far as the New Testament, though, there's not too much in the New Testament that I'm gonna give a hard disagree to across the board. That's me, though. I'm not an expert. Who would be the experts on that? Depends on what aspect. It depends on if you're talking about an expert on how old this stuff is. Then you're looking at people that are carbon dating that. If you're wanting, on how well it was translated, there's yeah.
We got Brian.
Yeah, if you if you want to know locations for where a book came from, you can. There's different insects and things that'll eat the pages or chew the glue.
Wait, no.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah, so you could track where a document was stored at or whatever that way. So there's so many people that are going to have their hands in the pie on that. It depends on what aspect you're looking into.
This is actually really fascinating. Can you go into that a little bit more? So what do they do? Like find a fossilized bug? And
you could find a molt of a silverfish or common animals that are insects that are going to be eating your books. There's different kinds of different species of them that are regional. So if a document was housed in Europe and then rediscovered per se in North America, you could look and see by the species of silverfish that was chewing on the glue where it had been stored at.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that's just with dealing with bugs. You get into people talking about different kinds of inks used to pin things, where different papers come from, different bindings, what population of cattle that if it's leather bound that the leather came from. They can trace so much information through all these different ways of archiving and that's why consensus isn't just one field. It's all of these fields conglomerating together to form a picture of our history, a picture of our physical universe that we live in. It's all these fields working together in unison.
This is probably one of the most interesting things I've learned in a while. I could never imagine different bugs eating pages to determine where a book is from. That's pretty cool. And I got to say, this is, I think, the first perspective in a long time, Brian, BrainBug, where we haven't had people waiting on hold. So if you want to talk to us, 951-364-2430. Brian, did you have any other questions?
Completely different subjects. Sure.
Okay. What other questions do you have? We'll take one more.
Okay. About a week or two ago, I called in to Truth Wanted, spoke to Aaron and Dave Warnock, and asked them a question about how it is that we can laugh at our old beliefs and how silly our old beliefs were. I've been a lifelong atheist, and I don't consider any beliefs that I've ever held in my life to be silly.
Really?
I've definitely held, and I've done dramatic reversals on my beliefs, but I never look back on my beliefs and laugh at them. I never say, oh man, that's so stupid. And I've always wondered about the mentality of various atheists, especially, who do laugh at their own beliefs. Does it feel like, I don't know about your two backgrounds there with you two guys, but if you had been Christians, and especially fundamentalists with what you now consider silly beliefs, whenever somebody else or yourself is making fun of those beliefs, do you feel that they are making fun of you at the same time?
So I will always do my best never to laugh at somebody else's beliefs, but I do actually laugh at my own. Because there were some beliefs I held that I'm just like, come on, Ethan, are you serious right now? You really, really believe that? Like, so I don't know. For me, it's easy to sometimes laugh at some of my old beliefs, but I guess when those beliefs are someone else's, that's when I try, when I don't want to laugh, because I want people to believe and see that I'm taking their claims as seriously as possible.
As for me, I never was necessarily a theist, but I did do my woo stuff in my younger years, and there's some things that I believed, or that I look back on it now and realize, it's stuff I wanted to believe. Encouraging myself to experience the normal human feelings in your body as something external. And looking back on that now, it does seem silly. And we get a lot of calls with people talking about the energy. I mean, it's always with ghosts and psychic people and all these, and even with some of the UFO people, there's always this energy that they talk about, the effects of this energy on their experience. And I remember those feelings. Religious people probably do remember those feelings too, from being in like church. The people will talk about the feelings, the euphoria and stuff. And I do look back and feel silly about mistaking these biological responses for something external. But I can see now, looking back, that it was more of a want to believe that that's what it was. Fake it till you make it sort of approach.
Well, on my earlier call, on the earlier program, I had mentioned that when I was first coming out publicly from the closet as an atheist, and then becoming more courageous and being willing to criticize religion, I was just afraid of religion still. At the same time, religion was very intimidating to me, and what helped give me that courage was to laugh at religion myself, and seeing other people laugh at religion. It really shook it down and took it down a couple notches. And things like Kissing Hank's Ass, or Landover Baptist, or Mrs. Betty Bowers, or The Onion, all these parody websites and satires were just great, and giving me courage and making me realize that, all the things that I think about religion that are absurd actually do seem absurd. It's not just me, not just some flaw in my thinking. So those things help. But like, I don't know if you're familiar with Kissing Hank's Ass in particular.
I have never heard of it.
I know Mrs. Betty Bowers, though.
Really good. Okay, Kissing Hank's Ass at first was written as a script. It's a parody of people defending Christianity. That's how I first encountered it, but it was later turned into several videos. You should do a search for it. The best one is 4 friends who are playing poker. So search for that. But it just reveals how absurd Christianity is, the claims of it, and then the apologetics behind it, what it sounds like to an outsider of it. So things like that really help me. But anytime somebody like The Onion or Mrs. Betty Bowers or such makes a parody of God, makes a parody of religious believers, and just makes it really funny to watch. I don't know how people who used to believe that cannot be offended at the same time. It's just a different experience that we have,
Right.
Especially people who laugh at their own former beliefs.
Well, George Carlin's been doing that, or was doing that back in the 70s, right? Making jokes about religion and belief in God and stuff. And I think a lot of people find that cathartic, especially when they're coming out of religion and they feel like, these people have been spending my whole life trying to trick me. That's gotta leave it sting, and having something, some kind of situation where you can be in where you can say, yeah, so stick it to them and make fun of them. It feels good to lash out at the people that you felt like they were oppressing you, all your life for the most part. But eventually we all get to, I shouldn't say we all do. Some people stay in that stage forever, but eventually a lot of us move on to a more engaging approach that we want. I don't know. I feel like I want to wake people up from bad ideas. That's my goal, to say, hey, is this really, do you think this is a justified and rational belief if we look into it? I mean, that's always a more, I don't know, amicable approach to engaging with people.
I think that is helpful for people who are already religious themselves, but for people like me who are not religious and still thought religious beliefs were silly, I was in the closet partly because I was still afraid of religion. So I think making fun of religion helps equip us and encourages us to not be so afraid of it. So I think it has a great use there. I was very confident after seeing people make fun of religion to come out, and I probably would have delayed coming out if that hadn't happened.
Right.
And I wouldn't be as vocal against religion if I hadn't come across people who are making fun of it. So I think it works on that end also.
We just need all different types of voices out there. There's not one atheist style that necessarily is going to work. Well, I guess I can't say that. I'm sure some styles work better than others, but for my beliefs, I needed a more aggressive touch because I prefer to be like shaken out of or abruptly pulled out of a bad belief. Like, of course, I'd prefer in a friendly way, but I needed someone to, I don't want to even say harshly, but really point out where I was screwing up. And that's what got me from point A to point B.
You think I would have been able to reach conservative Ethan?
Nope.
No?
Well, okay. I don't know, Brian. You're so nice that you may have been able to. All you really had to do was keep me talking and just keep asking questions. You're calm enough and patient enough that you might actually have been able to do it. It wouldn't have been over like one conversation. It would have taken some time because, dude, I'm telling you, my Facebook memories, there's some of them. There's some I'll share with you guys privately that I won't even post because I'm like, this is just too embarrassing. There's no way I'm sharing this because I would post some right-leaning shit. So, not stuff I'm proud of. Anyway, Brian, we want to thank you for taking the time to call in and speak with us.
Yeah, it's been good talking to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Brian. Have a good one.
All right. Good night.
All right, yeah, he was nice.
Yeah, very nice. And now we got some callers.
Yeah.
So there's one I'm gonna pull out of the screening room only because I know she's safe. Robin. Hey, how's it going? You're on with Ethan and Brian.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Yourself?
Hey, Robin.
Things are excellent. Thank you.
Good. Dude, you are an amazing photographer, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's why things are excellent. I just went full time, so it's huge for me.
You went full time as photography? Congratulations.
Yeah, just about 6 weeks ago. Yeah, I've been busting my butt doing the back work.
Oh,
Wow. Congratulations.
So, I have a question because I've been speaking to a lot more psychics lately. So, and I know you and I obviously differ on this, but how exactly can Brian and myself tell the difference between a genuine psychic and a fraudulent one?
Oh, God. That is such a hard question to answer. So the first thing that I would want to say about that is going to be kind of like a hippie, like a psychic's kind of answer, where it's about your intuitive feelings about the person. But if you're going on a really, scientific level, oh boy, people who offer their services for free, who are small time, who aren't asking anything of you, are generally a safer place to go because you know that they're not, trying to get something out of it. But of course, then there are psychics in the more popular world where they charge a good amount of money, but it's because they have all of this like amazing history with people of, doing this excellently. Then there's the middle ground where someone just charges like $50 or $100 for some type of psychic session, but right in the middle ground, you can be fooled by anybody. So it's hard to say just by meeting someone up front. Oh wait, I do have something. If they ask you questions, if they ask you any questions like, other than does this resonate with you, if they ask anything more specific, that is a bad sign because that's them trying to get answers from you.
Trying to cold read. Yeah.
I just totally lost my train of thought.
She was mentioning about cold reading and asking questions. You see these big auditorium people. Is there anybody that you see in the big auditorium settings doing readings that you actually think is genuine?
Ooh.
Well, I did go to a live reading with Teresa Caputo. You guys probably know her as a Long Island medium. There were moments within the entire session where I felt like this is information that you couldn't have gotten from anywhere. Like this is really specific. But there were a lot of times where my skeptical mind was in more control during that because I saw too many questions here and there, too much general, like pointing to a section of 50 people, like, I feel a young soul has passed here. He's a male. And there's like 18 people that raised their hands, especially because it was in South Tucson. So there were moments like that where I was not convinced. One person that I would absolutely suggest looking into, and he is one of the more famous people in this field now, and his name is Matt Frazier. He's this flamboyant guy from New Jersey with the cutest accent you've ever heard in your life, and he's got a really great long history of doing this. So he's actually one that I wanted to buy for Ethan to have an actual decent experience with a psychic.
See, I would have my buddy went to a psychic that he is fully convinced she knew things she couldn't have known. And I spent like hours with him trying to figure out like how she could have known what she did. And I reached out to see, because the problem is I get that people don't want to offer their services for free. because from their standpoint, it could be the equivalent of like me asking an artist to draw me something for free. Hey, you know, I'm going to test
Right.
you. Like an artist would be insulted by that. But at the same time, I would think some of these people, excuse me, would want to prove their ability. And in this scenario, the psychic would only do it if I paid $350. And I'm like if I could pay $350 and concretely know that I am getting legitimate information, it would be worth it. But for me, the problem is every psychic I've seen, it leads to like cold or hot reading. So I would be really frustrated with myself if I paid $350 and got nothing out of it.
And you know what? I spent $600 the other week on mentoring for my business, and I did not get out of it what I wanted. And one thing that I could have done to help that is going to reviews. That's a huge thing, is not just seeing a few good reviews, but seeing a long history of a lot of positive reviews. And if someone is able to build their life on being a psychic, they are either a complete fraud and they're just, you know, doing this cold reading crap, or they are a complete, I don't know, the opposite of fraud. They're completely genuine, and they make money off of it because they are so good at it. Because, I mean, in my photography, if I ask for less than what my time and effort and skill is worth, then, you know, no one's going to advance. So it's hard to find the middle ground, though. That's the hard part with it. So reviews.
So what about, why do you think, and this is my last question, we haven't had a psychic that could demonstrably prove that they have a real ability after all these years? Like, for instance, I think you and I have talked about the James Randi Educational Foundation. They used to offer
that $1 million challenge.
Yes, that one. It's not a thing anymore, which sucks.
There are other ones, though.
I would love to find a way to bring that back, but I don't have $1 million.
There are other challenges, though. I don't know the names of them. But
that's definitely a Patreon thing that you could run.
Ooh, yeah. Get 1 million people to give $1, and then we'll start the YFNA challenge to all psychics and anyone. Brian, you'd have to be there because, you know, science testing.
Well, is what she was.
One thing is your channel is obviously aimed at either people who are just incredibly skeptical and very strong atheists, which is great. I love that. Or you have people who are triggered by what you're discussing. And so you're not going to get a lot of psychics triggered by what your questions are, what your doubts are, what your disbelief is, because in that community, you kind of, I guess, have this sense of, I am meant to work with a specific kind of people in my life. Generally, it's going to be on a certain level. And if it's down at the, I don't want to say the bottom because that sounds bad, but at the bottom of, like, you're not in the psychic world. You don't do the meditation thingies. You don't, like, that's what I mean anyways. Then they don't reach down there. They don't get those notifications. They don't look at those pages. So I think maybe that's one reason you don't get so many deeply practicing people in that world on your channel. So and that's why I really want to pay to have a really good psychic. Like, I have a few that I've looked at over the years that I've followed that I would trust. I haven't read with them before, but I feel like I trust them. And hopefully I can get you a reading with one of them and give you your first solid experience with someone who does this for a living, so you can be skeptical as hell and be like, are you fraud? Or is this really genuine, awesome information?
Then we're at where I'm going to be, if it doesn't, I'm going to be frustrated because then you wasted your money. Like, and that's why, like, at one point I thought about doing like a Patreon.
Say it's $300, then that's $300 of a lesson for me to learn, you know? And sometimes, like you were saying with your last caller, you need a hard realization, and my doors are always open for that too. So we never know.
Right. Brian, did you have any other
I'd
questions?
like to be there for that too. If someone pays for you to have a psychic reading, I think I could take some time off and head up to Chicago and hang out with you.
And to any psychics willing to do this, if you can show me you have a real ability, I will be the first one on this show or on this channel being like, hey, this is legit. Like, my mind can be changed very easily. I need something more compelling than like guesses or just like, it's always very shallow.
Feeling things out is a lot of what it feels like. Yeah. I've never met a psychic who didn't feel things out.
Experiences. I wanted to ask Ethan one question. I shared with you an article that I believe relates to this directly, even though it's on a kind of abstract level. What was your opinion on, and I'll share for anybody else, the scientific study done on mice that is showing that other mice will react to a stimuli given to a different mouse?
When you say a stimuli, can you give me an example?
In the scientific study, the stimuli was relating to either food or a pain stimuli, I believe.
Well, I mean, wouldn't the mouse see the other mouse wincing or in pain and then?
Oh, no, so they're not in the same area. So there's a mouse in the box in one room and there's a mouse in a box in another room. And they do the study with just those two mice. And it seems that the one reacts when the first one is affected in some way.
Could you do me a favor and send that to me again? So I can review it. I'm going to send it to Brian as well, if that's okay with you.
Was this the test that was done in the 70s?
No, this is recent.
It's something more recent? Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I'd love to look into it. Sounds interesting.
Sure.
Awesome.
I'll send it back
Robin,
over. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Send that over, and thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. It was nice talking to you.
Y'all have a great night. I'm sending you my love.
Thank you too, and congratulations again on going full time.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, guys.
You too.
You too.
Well, sweet. Now we've got some callers.
Yep.
I am thinking line 4. What do you think, Brian?
Line 4. Let's see. Ooh. Charismatic cat. Okay, let's
Okay, so next caller wants to talk about the story of Atlantis with Brian to see if it's a real place. Charismatic Catholic. You are on with Ethan and Brian. How are you?
Doing good. How about you guys?
Doing good. Nice to talk to you.
All right. Atlantis, like Plato's Atlantis, right? Like the mythological or allegedly mythological kingdom.
That's right. I know I've called and talked about this topic before, but I definitely am interested in talking about it with you, BrainBug, because I've been advised.
I'm chopped liver over here.
I guess this is kind of your wheelhouse. So.
Yeah, no, Brian is definitely more qualified. That's for sure.
I love this stuff. Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, go ahead. Present your case.
Yeah. So basically, the crux of the case that I have is that I think Atlantis was a real place, not something that's from a story or meant to be like an allegorical or political, tale. That it was actually a real place with real people, and the story of ultimately how it came to an end in a cataclysm of a great flood did happen as well. And I think I believe this for a few reasons, some having to do with things that Plato says, other things having to do with things we know now about, modern geology. And, even in some sense, like
let's start there. Let's start with geology. Where do you feel that Atlantis was?
And sorry, also, do you believe Atlantis? Like, are you just curious if Brian thinks it, or where are you at on it? Like, do you believe Atlantis was a real place?
Oh, yes. I do. I would affirm the proposition that it was a real place.
Okay.
Was it in the Mediterranean or was it in the Atlantic?
I guess if honestly, I would say I would be agnostic on the location, but if I had to lean one way or another, I would say Atlantic.
Okay, because that's one of the big points of contention about whether it exists or not, is that some of the geology doesn't work for the proposition. But
Correct.
let's go into what you're proposing here. Go ahead.
Sure. So I guess I'm proposing that due to information that we get from Plato himself in terms of a timeline, we're told by Plato that that Atlantis, the cataclysm of Atlantis, there's a date on this. He says it happened 9,000 years before the time of Solon. These are words from Plato himself. We know who Solon was. Solon was actually an ancestor of Plato, a Greek lawmaker, existed several hundred years before Plato. Based on the fact that we have this timeline given to us by Plato himself, coupling it with things we know from I guess modern geology, I would fall on something like the period after the Younger Dryas period lines up with that timeline of 9,600 years for Plato would be 11,600 years for us. This falls in line with the Younger Dryas period after it called an event called Meltwater Pulse 1b, where we have massive ice sheets melting off into the Atlantic Ocean, causing the sea levels to rise. And I think it's because of this, it gives us good reasons to, the fact that Plato himself, if he did make it up, he was so spot on with the data that we know today from modern geology that he couldn't have access to. If he made it up, he was remarkably on the nose about it. I think this is just one good reason for why we should take it as a literal truth.
So it sounds like you're proposing that the memory of Atlantis was a folk memory of the catastrophe, when the melting of the I guess the drawback of the glaciation, the last ice age. There's a folk memory from that time period. Is that what I'm understanding?
A folk memory. I guess I'm not familiar with that term.
Okay, a folk memory would be something that was before it was ever recorded, that it was passed down by oral tradition. Usually, sometimes it could have been like a pantomime or something, a little hand play or something, but it's something that was passed down through successive generations orally, to where its origins are not clear anymore. That was later recorded as part of the story of the culture.
I would say I wouldn't commit to that, because Plato, we also know from Plato, there's an actual origin point of the knowledge that Solon gained for that 9,000 year mark. During his life, he went to Egypt. He went to the Temple of Sais in the Delta. And while he was there at the temple, that's where he gained the information, because while he was visiting the temple, the priest there outlined the story for him as it was recorded by them. And told, because he was skeptical, right? He's saying, well, you're saying this mighty civilization existed. You went to war with them. When was this supposed to have happened? And that's when they laid out the evidence to Solon and said, this happened 9,000 years ago. So it wasn't so much, I guess, of like an oral tradition, but more of like a written tradition that was passed on from the priest to Solon.
From the priest, was that in Alexandria?
It's in the delta of Egypt, so it's actually we would call it. I always get this mixed up because everything's backwards, right? So it would be the upriver in Egypt, which is actually south. So it's further south than Alexandria.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was this was supposed to be something that was lost, because I'm sure you've heard the written text about that Plato's work was based on was lost in the Library of Alexandria and all that. I'm sure you're familiar with those.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that's where we were going with that or not. But the problem that we have is 9,000 years ago, there wasn't and there isn't any evidence of advanced civilizations that long ago. The way that Atlantis is described in their fall, and they're hoisted by their own petard kind of narrative that Plato lays out. Not to say that necessarily that's what was the truth about what happened if it was based on a real place. It could have been some kind of seismic event or volcanic activity, something like that. But that people inferred as them being destroyed by their own arrogance as their technology got more and more advanced. But we don't have any evidence that there were any advanced technologies, not even to the point of like a Bronze Age at 9,000 years. So what happened? Where's all
I think we actually. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, if you think there is evidence, tell me about it.
I was going to say, I think we actually do. And by the way, when I say this, when I'm subscribing to this theory, the thing I wouldn't affirm, I'm not subscribing or affirming something like crystals or, anything. I'm just saying that I think we have good reasons to believe that there was this powerful civilization, right? Who had these certain seafaring capabilities, great war, very impressive in spreading its influence across the globe. So it wouldn't be something that would be considered like you or I would consider to be science fiction high technology, right? But getting back to like the Bronze Age even itself claim, I think we actually do, because the timeline I've laid out here is for 11,600 years ago. We now have evidence based on things like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey that there were hunter-gatherer civilizations that were able to construct giant megaliths in places like Göbekli Tepe 13,000 years ago. So that goes back even further.
Right. And I agree. Yeah, there's megaliths and village, where they can foundations, little villages and little settlements and stuff that have been dated back to this time frame, but not to the technology that you would expect from Atlanteans, from the way that Atlanteans are presented. Not saying that they had to have like futuristic, laser beams and stuff, but
that'd be cool.
A powerful seafaring empire that was, I believe that they were at least were supposed to have been influential from, the southern tip of South America and Africa up to the Arctic Circle. So we would expect to see remains of consistent civilization along, even if it's just ruins and not any kind of artifacts. Even if it's just foundational, we should expect to see some kind of consistency in the way that they constructed their buildings and the way that when we find these remains. Is there anything that you think that we've seen that would indicate that?
Well, I don't think we could rule out. I don't think we could rule out necessarily something like something we were to take today. We'll take like something like Stonehenge or Göbekli Tepe, right? I don't think we could rule out that these are connected to Atlantis. That perhaps these individuals who were so much more superior in their capabilities of not just seafaring, but agriculture, things like that they couldn't spread that influence to civilizations that we would see today, like at a site like Stonehenge.
Right. But we see there's so many cultures that we know how they spread and when they spread and where they were located at what points in time, based on just the remains of their pottery, based on just the way that they naped their arrowheads. We know where these people groups were at all these different places and times, and what kind of technologies they had access to, and who else they interacted with, and what other cultures they crossed over with. Because we see these, especially like garbage dumps and things like that. We can see who they're trading with and what kind of stuff that's being passed back and forth. We can see what they were using as currency, if they were using beads or things like that. We go through these trash dumps and we find out who they interacted with. We don't find any of these Paleolithic people having interacted with anybody with more from that time frame, having interacted with any more advanced cultures. And I don't think there's a proposal that the Atlanteans avoided other societies, right? So they would have been some inner.
Oh no.
Yeah.
We do have to wrap this up in a moment. So, CC, was there any follow up to that before we move on to our next caller? And by the way, Brian, really, really grateful you're here.
That was fun. Call back more when I'm on, CC.
Yeah,
I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, it's great talking with someone who has like a fascination with like, I guess like ancient history like this. So it was. I'll just end by saying, like, I think for me it mainly just a big sticking point for me would be the fact that because we have this specific timeline given to us by Plato, and we know, or we have good reasons to believe that it also falls in line with the timeline of when we know that the planet was kind of going through a really crappy period of like intense warming, water levels rising. I think Plato, if he wasn't telling the truth, he was just remarkably on the nose about it, which is incredible. Either way, I guess.
Yeah. Fascinating topic.
Yeah. And we can, we can continue it in Discord in the after show, which begins when the perspective ends. So thanks, CC. Good call.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Right. All right. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
See you in the after show.
All right. Who we got next?
Well, next, I'm excited to bring Eddie. I spoke to him a little bit earlier and asked if he would be willing to call in. So gave us a choice between the pro-life or God. I'm going to go with why he believes in God. I think that would be a better one. Eddie, you're on with Ethan and Brian. This is Eddie from the Brute Facts podcast. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm alive, so that's a good start.
No, that's always a plus.
Can't complain about that.
Why do you believe in God, Eddie?
Well, first, I wanted to ask a question to Brian.
Sure.
I have to know this, Brian. Do or can stick bugs bite?
You were what?
Can stink bugs bite or stick bugs?
Stick bugs. Stick
bugs.
bugs.
No, they're not going to bite you. Not at all. They have the males. The males have their little grabby thing on the end, though, that they'll grab onto the female with and hold on to her. And then if two males get on there, they'll sit there and fight while they're trying to mate with her. It's quite a spectacle. So if you get a chance to see that.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna try to put them together next time. We have some at my house that are, they're every bit of 8-9 inches long, massive.
I need a P.O. box for you to send those to.
Oh, that's creepy. 8-inch long bugs.
Yeah,
no, thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
They look like a stick with legs. It is the craziest thing.
Like centipedes and millipedes, man, those guys are just okay. Anyways, enough bugs. Even though, full confession, I used to actually own tarantulas. I was okay with now.
We have some of those.
I couldn't do it now. It's not my thing anymore. But yeah, I used to have 4 tarantulas. I ended up giving them to my uncle because he had like 9 or 10 at the time. So he just took over my collection. but they had a better life with him because he builds them like, if you go look at their cages, he builds them like supermarkets. Like one has a Walgreens in it, another has like a Dominick's. Like each
Wow.
one, he builds all these like creatures and environments for them. It's really cool.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
So
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick argument for why God doesn't exist.
why God
If
doesn't
bugs
exist?
Yeah, if bugs exist, God doesn't exist. If bugs exist, therefore God doesn't exist.
Or God's a bug.
Yeah, so what's that, bud?
I said, or God's a bug.
I'm getting
Now, that
growled
is a
at in
perspective I've
the
never
chat
considered.
right now because I'm getting sidetracked with bugs.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just had to know about this pig bug. So, yeah. I obviously I'm a Christian. I'm more of a philosophical Christian, and it's kind of complicated. For those who don't know me, I'm not a fundamentalist. I don't hold to inerrancy of scripture and all these things that fundamentalists hold to, or these feelings of God being close. And I don't even know what that means.
So are you a like left leaning, or you're just not a yeah, politically, are you more left leaning, or are you still pretty right?
Well, I grew up with a hippie mom, so I was hard left growing up. Got married, had kids, swung hard right, and realized they're just the flip side of the same coin, and kind of settled out in the middle. I'm like most Americans, fiscal conservative, libertarian socially, and that's kind of where I hang out.
All right. So why do you believe in God? Or could you why should I believe in God?
Yeah. Well, those are two pretty involved questions. Which one do you want me to?
All right, we'll start with
first.
Why do you believe in God? Like, what is your best, most compelling evidence that would make us like, oh my God, you're right?
Yeah, it's that we don't have that.
Wait, seriously?
No, yeah, seriously. We have
that's honest
human psychology. We have different epistemologies that we use and apply to the world. So I never expect. First of all, I'm not an evangelist. I don't even think evangelism, the way that it's done in the West, is even biblical. They did do street preaching and going town to town at the time to actually spread the initial church. But I believe that there's far more support for we're just to live our lives in example, follow the teachings of Christ, such as giving to the poor, the widowed, those in prison. And if someone, like I think it's in First Peter, if someone asks, then be ready to give an account. So if somebody asks me, I will gladly tell them why I believe and what I think it means. But other than that, my conversations every day is nothing to do with God unless somebody brings it up, because I don't think that's really our place. I think it's to live as an example. You know, the old cliche, talk is cheap. And
yeah, we're bringing it up, buddy. So you don't have to worry about that with us. We love to talk about it. So
yeah. So give us your best.
Yeah. So for me, I got to give you a quick backstory. I grew up in a very fundamentalist, legalistic church as a little child. My mother sent us there on Sunday so she could recover from Saturday. She was a single mom. We ended up in the streets as teenagers with a bunch of bad people that didn't care about God. If somebody would have asked me, I'd have said I was a Christian, but I didn't even know what that meant. Got married, had a kid, and things started to kind of, wheels started to turn. I really wanted to know about whether there is a God. And holding, fundamentalist views, young earth creationism and all this, and just accepting that is true and never really thinking about it or challenging. Once I started to get challenged on it, then being a science person myself, all of my whole worldview come tumbling down. I went through a deconstruction and became agnostic for a short time, And that started my study into world religions, the main religions, about, is there a God? Who's a God?
Could I
always
nudge you a little bit?
Yes.
Could I nudge you to the side of like the most, like, what specifically convinced you?
What happened? What flipped that switch?
Right. Like, what's the most compelling thing you have for God?
Yeah, that's where I was fixing to go with it.
Mhm.
So I never could. I've always had this intuition that there was something higher. There's not a point in my life that I said, okay, God's real, I'm going to believe in God. There's never been that point. It's something that's just been innate. Now, for transparency, I thoroughly and fully understand that living in the West in a heavy Christian influenced society, and my parents being quasi-religious, may have a huge part in that. But some things we get to choose what we believe in, others we don't. We just find ourselves convinced, or we aren't convinced by it. So I couldn't ever get away from the idea that there was some kind of God, something. It was things like beauty, music, expression, art, all these things that seem to really not play a part in the naturalistic world seem to point me to something else bigger than this.
So
And
if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying, like, I'm just trying to steelman you here, that basic, like, music, art, people's expression, like, expression is what convinced you God exists?
No, I think these are all pointers to something. And what I mean is the need to express ourselves. Why do we find sunsets beautiful?
I like that we started this conversation about bugs, because I got to say that what we find beautiful as humans, not and we know that other species find things beautiful. We see, the peacock's a good example, spreading his big tail out for the ladies to admire how gorgeous he is, so that they want to mate with him. So we know that other animals have neural responses to visual stimulus or audible stimulus. You hear the frogs singing in the pond for the ladies as well, and that's not always a mating thing. Sometimes it's a display of claiming their territory or whatnot. But animals do seem to express a fondness for beauty, both music, visual, even dare I say, the olfactory senses that we find so repugnant as humans may be appealing and have a level of beauty to members of the animal kingdom. But to imply that would mean that there's some kind of external force, I would need some kind of backing on that. It just seems to be an emergent property of sexual selection.
Yeah, so the fact that animals do that doesn't have any. I'm not saying that this is exclusive to humans.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't. As a matter of fact, I think you would be extremely hard pressed to find the reason why even evolution that we find music, beauty, art, and all these things, just to say that it's part of the mating process really is. I mean, that's just, it doesn't really tell us anything. We don't know why. But I think you also would agree that we're different than other beings around the world, given the level of consciousness and awareness and, the abilities that we have through consciousness, which is consciousness would be the next one that would be, to me, seem to point to something non-materialistic. But also, let me make this straight too. I don't think there is a single argument or a single thing that gets you to God. It is purely an abductive case. It's you have a body of things that you believe may be evidence that points that way. And with my epistemology, I'm a probabilist. I'm an evidentialist. So if I have this big body of evidence, regardless if it's a bunch of little evidences or a big evidence, it seems to tilt the pendulum on the side of theism.
So
but
if I may, this goes into like what counts as evidence. Now, everything you've presented to me hasn't really been evidence for God. Like expression, that's just expression. Could you give me an example?
But have you really thought about why we have the need to express ourselves through the arts, through music, why we find things beautiful?
Whether we find things beautiful or not has nothing to do with a belief in a God.
Why would you say that?
I guess
I'm not saying you have to have the belief to find things beautiful. I'm saying, why do we have these things innate within us as a species? What is if there's not a naturalistic or evolutionary purpose to it, what is the reason that we have these things? Why do we have altruism? All these?
But asking that question, like, I don't necessarily have an answer for that. Brian might, but just asking that question doesn't necessitate a God, though. Just because it's not, because it sounds like what you're doing right now is, well, what else could it be argument, which is something I used for many years to justify my belief in God.
No, it's not a what else could it be. It's no different than it's a hypothesis. If you have, let's say, do you think that God's possible?
I would say highly unlikely. Like on the scale, if 10 meant no God and 1 meant there is a God, I would say I'm 9.9999. Like, I can't tell you there's no God, but I used to think there were certain things that were evidence for God, but I have yet to see not only not compelling evidence, but any evidence for God.
Right. So this is why I prefaced what I said with human psychology and epistemology. This is why I said that there's not going to be, one thing that's going to give you that aha, there's a God. I just don't think that's possible.
I do agree with you that psychologically that we are predispositioned to believe in something supernatural because of both the nature of how long we spend in a vulnerable state, in a conscious vulnerable state as an infant, because it's the first 8 months of your life. Generally, you're pretty much stationary and depending completely on someone to feed you everything you need, all the information you need, give you everything you need. I think there's some psychological disposition to being, and that's what's led us to be a great social species, is how long we spend in development under parental care as well. But it leads to a culture of passing on the notion of a higher force handing everything down to us, and you're psychologically predispositioned to accept that.
Well, yeah, that's just, that's an extrapolation. I've read many of psychological papers on why we have this, quote unquote, daddy or mommy complex. Why there's a big man.
Oh yeah, there's multiple angles. I agree.
Yeah, and it's left wanting for me. But I don't necessarily expect you to agree with me. Mm-hmm. So my point was, with God being possible, if God is possible, then that means that God is a possible hypothesis for a lot of the things that we experience in life that we can't find through science, empiricism. So it's really nothing more than a hypothesis that explains this body of facts. So it's, that's what we do in science. We look at these sets of facts, and I'm not saying it's as rigorous as what the scientific method is. I'm not denigrating science at all, and I'm not saying that empiricism or the scientific method is not a fantastic way to know things, especially about the physical world. But if we have a hypothesis that can explain all of these things, to me, it seems more plausible to, take the hypothesis that can explain the most facts and account or explanatory scope of all these facts.
So is that God the hypothesis? Is that the proposition here is that God's the hypothesis, because a hypothesis, we should be able to test it. That's part of its part of what a hypothesis is. So is that, because how are we going to test it then? That's where I go next.
No, a hypothesis is one stage in the scientific method.
Right.
If we're going to subject God through the scientific method, I mean, when we look at history, we create inference to best explanation. It's a hypothesis about what seems to be the case. We can't test it. We can't repeat it. We can't do these things.
You can test it. Yeah. What you do is you make predictions. So you it's like, okay,
from historical events.
Right. You can say, we can go and say if Troy existed, we'd find it in this general vicinity, and then when we find Troy, then that's.
So
couldn't Eddie?
You're not. I mean that. Yeah.
I couldn't right now. What you're doing, if I was to say everything you've presented isn't evidence for God, it's evidence for aliens, how would we determine who's right and who's wrong in that scenario?
Yeah, I just gave a few of the facts starting off. I was actually going to give you the whole picture before we kind of went off. The thing is, so with those things, because you asked, why I think that there's a God. And, first, like I said, I just find myself convinced that there is. I can't give you all the explanation, but I've had many doubts over the years, and I can tell you things that keep me from going to the no God hypothesis. So then there's the metaphysical arguments, the modal contingency argument, Aquinas' pure act, and Aristotle's unmoved mover, moral realism. All of these seem to be pointers and building a case or the fine-tuning of the universe. All of these, when you take all of these things that are metaphysical things that we can't, by the category of what it is, find through science. The science can tell us the how, but it doesn't tell us the why.
Well, some of those aren't actually scientific arguments. They're more of philosophical arguments, prime mover or unmoved mover.
That's what I call metaphysical arguments.
We got to try and firm this up, or wrap this up. To summarize, it sounds like you're saying there is no empirical data that would prove God exists. Is that accurate?
What, do you only accept empirical data?
Well, no, I'm just asking you a question. Is that accurate?
I think that the empirical data can lead us to a metaphysical hypothesis, but it's not a hypothesis that we're going to be able to put through, a rigorous scientific method. And if someone's looking for scientific evidence for God, other than, looking at like fine tuning, or I'm not a big fan of intelligent design, but I think that there appears, and I know human psychology, we look for patterns.
Yeah.
But there appears to be, a balance in the world that doesn't seem to be, fully explainable by,
what kind of balance?
And, what's that?
What kind of balance?
Like,
it seems like, because for the majority of the existence of the universe, it's been like a violent, very fast moving and tumultuous time period. So,
right, it settled into this golden zone for carbon life. I mean, you don't find that fascinating?
Yeah, it's wonderful. We're here because of it. That this is a stage of it, but it's gonna pass through this stage too, and then it's gonna go back to a state that can't support the life as we know it after that. So I mean, we exist when in a period where it's perfect for us to exist is a tautology. It's just saying that we exist here because this area is perfect for us to exist here because we exist here. It just goes in a circle.
No, it's not. No, that's the anthropic principle, and that's actually one that's usually brought up as an objection to fine-tuning is the anthropic principle, and that's not that's question begging. It's
Right.
the
Tautology.
So we do have a hypothesis given. We do have we do believe, given the laws of thermodynamics, and that we will eventually, based on how the universe, the physical universe is now, there will be a heat death eventually. I mean, we'll reach maximum entropy. That's
Right.
true. However, now we've had to go back and, posit dark energy and dark matter because the galaxies are held together by some unknown force that we don't know. I'm not saying that's God. I'm talking about our ability to know where the universe is heading, and the universe is actually expanding faster than it was calculated to be. So I don't know that we can say that this isn't an eternal universe. I don't, and to get from a certain point, of initial expansion and to settle out into this, perfect environment on this one little sphere, as far as we know. I don't have any issue with there being possible aliens, and to have, for conscious life to be from the material on this planet in this golden zone to allow us to be here and thrive and evolve.
It's a golden zone for us because we evolved here, not say this is surely you've heard the puddle analogy, right? Where the puddle says this hole is perfect for me.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the puddle analogy is terrible. It's question begging. So how would you support that?
No, the opposing the puddle analogy points out question begging. It's not question begging. You got that flip flopped.
No, it absolutely is question begging. Yes, it is question begging. We're in the puddle because the puddle fits us. You're assuming that the puddle fits us, and we're only there because the puddle fits us.
You're assuming that the hole is there for the puddle.
Because the puddle fits the hole, right?
Because the puddle fits in the hole, that the hole must be there for the puddle. But the hole is just a hole, and the puddle is just a puddle.
Yeah, the puddle analogy is a terrible analogy. It is question begging. Even atheist philosophers balk at it because it's not a good analogy at all. It's nothing more than the anthropic principle. We're just here because we can see ourselves here at this point in time, and that's why we're here. That is literally question begging.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That we're in this goal. You're saying that we exist in this Goldilocks zones because this Goldilocks zone was made for us. No, we evolved in this Goldilocks zones because we can live in the Goldilocks zone. We are emergent from that environment, not the environment made for that environment. We are emergent from that environment. And we see that we're emergent from that environment in the fossil record and in our genetics.
Support that.
Yeah, the fossil record.
Support that we're just here because we evolved to be here.
Because we can see that we've evolved here. It's evident.
Because we evolved. So because we evolved,
we are an emergent property of the environment in which we evolved in.
So are you familiar with the Boltzmann brain problem?
No, sorry, the what problem?
The Boltzmann brain problem.
Boltzmann brain?
Yeah, so if we're going to have a purely naturalistic universe that evolves to this golden zone of complex carbon life, it is far more likely that we would evolve into very simple creatures such as a brain and eye that's comprehending the world. There's given the probability of developing complex life on naturalistic evolution alone is extremely improbable. We're far more likely to be very simple creatures with just brains and eyes. So we should be just brains and eyes floating around in the universe, because you just don't get you add more time. Time is not doesn't have causal power. There's no causal power to time. So there's no reason that we should have evolved to extremely complex carbon life with the ability to even think about where we live and being in a golden zone and things like that.
I don't know enough about the Boltzmann brain thing that you're talking about to discuss it. So
we do have to wrap up in a moment because we got 2 more calls. Brian, did you have any last questions?
Oh no, I'm good.
All right. Eddie, from where can people, as quickly as possible, where can people check you out at?
Yes, Brute Facts podcast. I have a YouTube channel, and it's on all the major platforms. And I work with Pasta Mike at Normalizing Atheism. He has his own channel, Normalizing Atheism, on YouTube. He's the producer and editor, and a phenomenal one at that. But we bring on atheists, theists, philosophers, academics. I've had Richard Carrier, Graham Oppie, T-Jump. I've had a whole slew of people on, and we just interview them to find out about them, and not so much the work itself. So,
all right. Well,
but
Eddie,
I do appreciate you guys entertaining my call and
I do
giving the pushback.
I do think it was a massive God of the Gaps fallacy, but we could save that for next time.
That's
Yeah.
not a fallacy, though.
The God of the
That's
Gaps
not a
isn't
real
a fallacy?
No, it's not. It was actually coined by theists, and it was against other theists who were in opposition to the scientific method. So if that was a God of the Gaps, then everything in science, when someone says, well, we just don't know yet, or naturalism will explain it or something like that, then you could just flip it right around and say, well, that's naturalism.
Oh my God, that's the most
That's
idiotic thing I've ever heard. No, because naturalism is based on previously received empirical evidence. So we say that we can experience the world physically in the way we experience it, in the way that we document it, and we measure it, and we understand it, that the other things that we experience are going to adhere to these same physiological criterion, that we're going to be seeing the same laws of physics, that we're going to see all these things, and that's what we build physics on. So to say that, oh, well, that's, I'm sorry?
You're in a worse position now.
How?
You're stuck in circular reasoning.
How's that?
Because everything we experienced in the past, it's going to come about like we experienced it in the past. That's called metaphysical naturalism, and almost nobody holds to it because it's circular reasoning.
No, you don't understand naturalism. It sounds like
it absolutely is.
Oh goodness!
All right, so I think we need to continue.
I promise you, I understand naturalism.
I promise you that you don't.
I'm going to go with Brian on this one.
Don't.
He's a science guy.
That's fine. Well, science, that's an appeal to a false authority. I mean, that's not.
Oh my!
It doesn't matter what somebody is. That if you commit circular reasoning, you are stuck in circular reasoning. I don't care what somebody.
I don't think I'm in circular reasoning. I just say that to not supply an answer for something that's novel and unprecedented without evidence is a fallacy. That's called God of the Gaps. That's what Ethan was explaining to you.
No, it's not. It's not even you accuse me of not even knowing about naturalism. You don't even know that's not a fallacy. Come on.
It is a fallacy. You seem to be really uninformed on these terms and what they mean and how they're applied. So I think that this is probably a good place for us to stop here, and you take a couple of maybe call back in a couple of weeks after looking into these topics and learning a little bit about naturalism and how it's applied and how we use it in ecology and how we build models based on it and how we understand it across the board. Take a few weeks to understand that, and then give us a call back, and I'll talk to you about it again. We can talk about naturalism.
All right. Thank you, Eddie, for taking the time to call in, and I hope you have a good day. All right. So, Brian, when are we hosting the debate between you two?
I don't know.
You were getting fired up.
Well, it's this naturalism of the gaps it's nonsense. Naturalism is our understanding, or the way we understand the world that we live in. It's not some, what do you say, circular reasoning. Naturalism, circular reasoning. No, it's just understanding the world that we live in. Anyway.
All right. So we've got two did we just get another caller? Okay. Well, we've got two callers. We're trying to get to all of them before we go. Okay. So this next person has proof of aliens. Joseph, you're on with Ethan and Brian. How are you?
What's up, fellas?
How you doing today?
Hello.
Doing good, doing good. How you doing there?
Doing well, thank you. So what would you
Good.
say is
I
the
think
most
I know how to prove that there's aliens, and I can ask you a question, and you'll be able to answer it yourself. You ready?
Yes.
Explain crop circles. Boom.
Brian?
Crop circles?
Yeah. How does
Yep.
like okay, so how does a crop circle prove an alien?
Well, people think the aliens made crop circles.
Right, but just because they think they made it, does that mean they actually made it?
Well, there's been crop circles with actual depictions of aliens on them. Morse code. I mean, if we were like phone to phone, cell phone to cell phone, I'd be able to show you pictures. But if you just look up crop circles, if you just Google image crop circles, you'll see this one spectacular image, and it's just unbelievable. It's got this big head alien, right? And it's got this circular disc, and in the disc there's a Morse code, you know, thing in it. And when they decipher it, it says stuff. It says time is short, there will be imposters, closing conduit, stuff like that. And there's nothing on Earth that can make what do you call it? A crop circle the way crop circles are made. They're made in the dark. They're made overnight, and they're made. I mean, and there's no profit in it for any human to make a crop circle like that. And then they're nicely, and then the wheat, the crop stems are nicely bent over, sharp right angles. I mean, you've seen crop circles, right?
I have, but I could also see how a human could do that. I've seen, I don't know if you've ever seen those people who do art in the snow. So it looks like a crop circle, but they do it in the snow. And so from like a helicopter, plane, I probably can't see it from a plane, but from like a helicopter or um, up in the air, you can see like these beautiful designs. And I could see where it'd be like, man, this is so beautiful. Like, who made it? But it's just humans. So why jump to it being aliens when it is possible that humans have done it?
And people have shown how they do it.
Well, first of all, like I said, it's done overnight in the dark within hours, like one day it's there, next day it's there. And then, most people do things for profit. Why in the world would somebody make these elaborate crop circles for nothing? I mean, if you Google, everybody Google crop circles, and you'll see the articulateness, the detail.
Oh,
It's
I
so
can
fantastic.
see them. But we have some incredible artists in the world that, to me, a more likely explanation. And I'm looking at a bunch of them now, and yeah, they some of the ones I'm looking at look absolutely beautiful. But again, these to me is just human imagination, and it's something we could do with the right equipment.
Silently overnight. Okay, well let's go on to some others. Okay. Now you've seen like those alien ships. You've seen you've seen videos of alien ships flying all over the place, and there's these things called reptilians. Have you heard of reptilians?
So I do believe, if I understand it correctly, I believe that there are people who think that reptilians are running, disguised as humans, running the world. Is that accurate?
Correct. They're behind the Illuminati. Yeah, and they want to take over the world, and they eat people. So you better watch out.
Well, that's scary.
You better not
So
shout.
how do you know?
And they live underground.
How have you ever caught one of these like lizard people?
Yeah, I don't want to catch one. They are some bad.
Where's
I do.
You up.
Where's the evidence for them though?
No, they're vicious. The legend of the vampire comes from the vampires, and if you notice, in every civilization, there's always a dragon. Dragon. If you look on a lot of our if you look a lot on a lot of our symbols, there's always a dragon. Chinese has a dragon. The Indians have a dragon. We have dragon. Enter the dragon. The English have a dragon. How come all these dragons is all over the place? It's because of the reptilian influence. And matter of fact, I've taken another step. We are part reptilian.
Well, let's talk about why there are dragon legends all over the world. There's so if we look at the correlation between what we call a dragon to what they call a dragon in East Asia, they're not actually describing the same creature. And then you get into like South America, where what you say, a dragon is the feathered serpent, which is also not an entity that seems to share much in common with what we'd call a dragon in European mythology. And even among European mythology, there's multiple kinds of dragons and serpents and all these other mythical creatures. You could make correlations between some of them and some extinct animals, specifically like extinct whales like Basilosaurus. I think there's been some compelling cases that Protoceratops in Mongolia. I'm sorry?
These civilizations are separated by thousands of miles. I mean, how come there's so many of these so-called dragons and they're separated? And I know we're short on time, so I'm going to jump around, okay? Another one, pyramids. You know what pyramids are? Pyramids are markers that alien spaceships can see from the sky. Also, like the Washington Monument, those pillars, those pointed obelisks.
Oh, also, pyramids are
it's one all over the country, and that is alien related too. The aliens designed it, but humans built it.
Well, pyramids are also. I didn't know if this was something you'd take into consideration. Pyramids are also like the easiest way to stack stones, like into a structure. It's like the easiest way is to go vertically.
You know how heavy those stones are? Nobody's going to just stack those stones. These aliens had a purpose. Plus, I think the ones in Giza, they point toward constellations in the space with pinpoint accuracy. It's just amazing how they do it. There's something going on. I mean, so it's just too much effort for a human to take the time to make that. There would have to have been a motivation, and the motivation was alien influence.
There's a lot here, Joseph. So Brian, since we're on limited time, do you want to go with the pyramids, or do you want to stick with
I want to talk about the dragons. If he's done talking about dragons, then that's fine.
The reptilians and the dragons. That's real fascinating stuff. So and there's all kinds of other aliens. But
how
work on
could you demonstrably prove to us that these reptilians are real?
How can I prove it to you? Okay. Reptilians also have hybrids. They're part human, part reptilian people. And they're part of the Illuminati, and they help control the world. And you can tell the reptilian type people by their eyes, because their eyes are slits. And sometimes when they're not concentrating, their eyes can slip, and you could see it. Like Pelosi, she's one of them. The Bushes, Daddy Bush, he's one of them.
How do you know this, though?
How do I know
like
that?
Pictures or
because it's easy to say that that George Bush is some reptilian, but how exactly do you prove it to people like myself and Brian?
Well, he's gone, so we can't really prove it to him. But
okay, how can we prove it with like anyone?
Art all over the world, you could see depictions of dragons, because reptilians don't want you to. They said they do not want people to depict them in their true form, so they alter their form, and the altered form of the reptilian is the snake. That's why if you look at a lot of cultures, they all have snakes in them. They don't have
Well,
snakes, they got dragons. Something's
snakes
going
are
on with these snakes and these dragons.
cosmopolitan group of lizards, so they're pretty well established all around the world. But again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier about the way that what we call a dragon from one culture is not the same thing as what a dragon is depicted as in another. So why are there inconsistencies in these dragons? Because one dragon will have feathers, the other's the scales, the one lives in the water, the other one lives in the clouds. But these aren't the same entities. They're just we just lump them together as big. The only things they seem to have in common is that they're large animals that are dangerous. That they they don't even you can't even say they all have sharp teeth. There's no what features of a dragon are consistent. I can't think of any.
That big old mouth.
Yeah, they got mouths. I guess that's true. Yeah. Some of them have 2 legs, some of them have 4 legs.
That descendant of the reptilians, because like they show the vampire just biting with 2 teeth. No. What the reptilians do, they bite the whole neck and just eat, blood. I know that's gross, but yeah, they eat flesh, man. They're some bad dudes, and they live underground, and they came from a planet called it's not Tiamat. Meringue. I forgot the name of that planet. Y'all people help me out.
Well, I wouldn't know because I don't believe that they're reptilians are real, but we do have to wrap up in a moment. So Joseph, I'm going to ask you a favor. Could you go ahead and send me, we're connected on Facebook. Can you send me all the photos you're referring to, and then I can pass them on to Brian?
Sure. It's going to blow your mind. I mean, I'm going to make you a believer. You'll be like, wow. If you believe 1 and 1 is 2, you're going to believe in these aliens after I send you these pictures. I got real pictures. I got motion pictures. I got videos. You guys need to look up that thing called Alien Interview. Snowden revealed it when he infiltrated that place. And out of it, they had the video of the alien interview. And this alien is real. When you watch it, you'll see it. Oh, and also, remember Alien Autopsy that came on about a decade ago? That was real. They try to say, oh, it's fake, and then they say, oh, it's real and it's fake. But that alien autopsy, that was real too. It's all on YouTube. Go ahead and check it out. You'll see.
All right. Well, yeah, if you could, Joe, we gotta get to our last caller. But yeah, if you could send me all that stuff, I will share it with Brian, and then as long as you send it to me, I will also present them on the air next week at the start of the show.
Okay, hey, you got it. We'll do. Hey, thanks a lot, buddy.
Appreciate it. Hope you have a good day.
Hey, you have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So for those watching, we do go to Discord after the show. We've got one more call. We're going to try and get through it fairly quickly. But anyone is welcome to join us in the Discord after party and hang out. Let's get to our last caller. We've got Ralph in Berlin. The topic is offending Christians is similar to offending other groups of people. Not sure what he means, but T. Ralph, you're on with Ethan and Brian. How are you?
Thank you for your patience, Ralph. I know you've been waiting for a while.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying the show. It's my first time in. I think the second time I've heard you cats. So yeah, I've been in stitches for part of it. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you. Can hear you perfectly. So
I'm a theist. So I'm a theist, and I only recently started running into some of these YouTube debate streams or just call-in shows. And I've noticed a little pattern, so I guess it's related to politics and faith, is it looks like Christians are okay out-group to mock, deride, laugh at, no big problem. But if I apply the same principle to, say, race or gender, instantly the entire skeptic community seems, oh, no, there's no love in that. So my kind of question is there a duplicitous standards? Is it okay to mock Christians but not black people or gays or women? Or Christians given hey, let's just mock them? Not that I'm saying mocking's wrong. So I'm from England. Mocking's a pastime of the nation. Well, so what do you guys think?
Sure. A belief is very different than who somebody is as a person. So I would consider that being a false equivalence, making fun of someone's belief to making fun of someone's race. And I could see why very easily people would be up in arms over that, because I mean, you can't change the color of your skin. You can change your beliefs.
It's
now
immutable characteristics.
Immutability, right? So is that the immutability of characteristics? But I could easily flip that and say, okay, so the only reason you have black or gays or women or Christians or Muslims are being given something is you're worshiping this abstract idea that you choose of equality under liberalism. Except you're not applying the equality to Christians again. So even though it's an immutable characteristic, that argument won't hold true, because I could apply the same thing to liberalism, which is a mutable abstract concept. And you say, hey, you're treating everyone equal except for Christians. So is that a fair refutation of that point? Or?
I don't know that I followed. I'm sorry.
Yeah, same. I don't understand what you're asking.
So
I'm saying, sorry, go ahead.
Immutable characteristics would be like your race and your gender, your sex, your genetics. Even those are immutable characteristics. You have a disability, things like that. So I don't think that having any belief is a immutable characteristic. Or
my point is, so I can understand why discrimination, or we could agree that discrimination against immutable things, I've got big ears, like I say, I get it, right? Or color, or gender, race. Mm-hmm. But then it's also immutable things you choose, right? Like your values or your
right, yeah.
Right. So we also have legislation that discriminates against those things, right? Protection of faith, protection of these things. So it looks like, however, the argument is not immutability doesn't get me out of it, because I'll agree that immutable is bad. But it seems like within the immutable set in which we have protected human rights, Christians allowed to, so homophobia bad, I mean, you make it simple, homophobia bad, Christophobia, and that's all right. So the question then becomes, is the skeptic community, my initial question, except it's being Christophobic? So, and then on the back end of, God bless Eric, your last call as well.
Hello?
Did we lose you?
Hello?
General.
Hello? Hello? Okay, well, that kind of sucks. All right, we'll see if he calls back in. We'll give it a second. So I think what he was trying to say is Christian phobia a thing?
I think it could become a thing if Christians become a marginalized enough group, and I don't think that that we should, because they're Christians, that if that were a situation we were in, it's I think that we should allow for people to have their religion. I don't think that we should discriminate against them. I don't think we should mock them. Me and Ethan spend a lot of time trying to dispel that, all religious people are mentally ill and things like that. We spend a lot of times pushing back against that.
Yeah, I personally, I don't want to really make fun of people's beliefs. All right, we're at 8:49. I don't know what happened there. If you could, T-Raf, call. Well, I'd love to have you call next week. We'll hold the first spot for you so we could continue this conversation. Anyway, yeah. All right. Want to thank our top tier patrons: Cindy Plaza, Kenneth Leonard, Sky, Jump and Shoot, Oz P, Secular Rarity, Philip Leach, Caitlin Beyond, Toast, Richard Gilliver, Sunset Sarge, The Blazing Wizard Pope, Amit Matthew, Kianta and Fava Beans, Ray Sylvester, and Caitlin Beyond. Thank you all for your patronage. We'll be back. Excuse me. We'll be back Thursday with the Pickup Line and Hannah Vaughn at 9 p.m. A show where we talk dating, relationships, and sex. This Thursday, we'll be talking about the sex convention that I may or may not have went to. Brian, what do you have going
on? Yeah, I got my stream coming up Saturday. We do that every Saturday morning, live from the Hive. We talk about some things like this, UFOs and Bigfoot and stuff like that, and pictures that people want me to look at. Then we also look at Conservapedia. It's a fun time. Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. And everyone who wants to join us, we're going to go head over to Discord for the Perspective Discord after show. And I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful week. We still need a closing line for the perspective. So the first person to come up with a closing line that we use on this show will receive a $25 Amazon gift card.